Right, I want to bring in Simon Marks here, who is, of course, LBC's Washington correspondent, because the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has been speaking to NBC about the US operation in Venezuela and giving a few new answers for us this afternoon. So let's just bring in Simon now. Simon, what's he been saying? Good afternoon.
Afternoon to you, Paul. That screech of tyres that you can hear is Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, trying to apply the brakes to what was yesterday a runaway lorry that was released by President Donald Trump. He's given a very combative interview to CBS. And remember that CBS is now an increasingly pro-Trump network in the United States. And the fact that this was such a combative interview, I think, gives you a sense of the scale of the effort that Marco Rubio is having to go to try and explain exactly what the US government's position is with regard to Venezuela post-Maduro. First of all, he has scoffed at the notion that America is at war.
There's not a war. I mean, we are at war against drug trafficking organizations. It's not a war against Venezuela.
And when it comes to President Trump saying yesterday that America is now running Venezuela, the Secretary of State says that what the president meant was that because the United States has placed an effective military embargo on oil shipments leaving Venezuela aboard those sanctioned oil tankers, as a result, the United States is in the catbird seat and it can determine exactly what happens next in Venezuela.
We are enforcing American laws with regards to oil sanctions. We have sanctioned entities. We go to court. We get a warrant. We seize those boats with oil, and that will continue.
He says, in other words, it's all about controlling the flow of oil out of the country. That, he argues, will force the regime, now headed by former Vice President under Maduro, Delcy Rodriguez, the new president of Venezuela, to accede to America's demands. But he refuses to be drawn on what happens if the new president, Rodriguez, will not accede to those demands. He says the president of the United States retains the optionality to launch a fresh military assault on Venezuela. He says he doesn't think this has to be at all about boots on the ground. And every time the interviewer on that program tries to tie Marco Rubio down and explain exactly why President Trump yesterday even named Marco Rubio himself, the Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Kane as essentially the new rulers of Venezuela, he says, I'm not going to have these conversations in the media. These are delicate and complicated things that require mature statesmanship. And those communications, he says, will continue with President Rodriguez. There is no suggestion in this interview at all that President Trump or the Secretary of State has any kind of timeline in mind for fresh elections in Venezuela, even for regime change. And I think it's important to underscore there hasn't been regime change in Venezuela. The man who claimed to be president of the country has been spirited away to New York to face criminal charges of narco-terrorism there and has been immediately replaced by his deputy. And every time the interviewer on CBS tried to pin Marco Rubio down on why the Venezuelan government is being left in charge, he pushed back and insisted, well, what did you expect us to do? Look at the fuss it's created when we went in and got just one guy. Imagine if we'd pulled them all out. So shifting sands taking place. And if you watched that press conference yesterday, and I'm sure you did, Paul, you will have seen Marco Rubio looking just deeply uncomfortable at various points as Donald Trump clearly made it up on the fly. And today in the United States, he's the clean-up man.
I love this phrase, mature statesmanship, which, of course, is a hallmark of the Trump administration. Simon, thank you so much for keeping us updated there. Really appreciate it. That was Simon Marks there, LBC's Washington correspondent, with the very latest coming out of Marco Rubio.